Hello, konnichiwa, and welcome back to the past, present, future of the blockchain. I am Satoshi Nakamoto. This is not me. How many times have they tried killing you, Dr. Wrong? 2, 3? Those are rookie numbers. Episode 2, Awakening Bitcoin. As shown in the previous video, this is what the Bitcoin op checksig validates signature and public key pairs against. In fact, it's not this entire blob of data. The blob is hashed by the function named SHA-256D, a double SHA-256, so a key actually only signs the 32-byte value of the hash data blob. Here's a nice GIF of SHA-256. As you can see, the output is 256 bits, e.g. 32 bytes, and it changes completely whenever even just a single bit of the input changes, and you can't recreate the input from the output. It works only one way, like gravity sucking and compressing any amount of bytes into just 256 bits, representing them all. Hashes are important building blocks of the blockchain, computer security, and file data integrity. So when someone says they're going to send you a file that matches a specific 32-byte SHA-256 sum value, e.g. a checksum of all the bytes in the file, and they subsequently release the file, and it doesn't match what they originally promised, you sit up and take note, as the files or people no longer have any integrity whatsoever. I showed you the most basic output locking script in the Genesis transaction, pay to public key, but this is the next iteration with a few more opcodes, and it uses a hash function, two actually, combined into one opcode, and it finishes with an op checksig, pay to public key hash. And originally, this wasn't the thing people needed to sign to pass op checksig. This was the original transaction digest algorithm, but it had flaws, so we moved to the other one. But since we're restoring Bitcoin as best as possible in the Chronicle release, the original transaction digest algorithm will also be restored and can be used alongside the upgraded compressed version selected by way of something called a signature hash value. Moving swiftly forward, however, here's an overview of the main topic of this episode, which is nChain's PushTX technique released in April 2021. Before this research was published, transactions were a bit boring, like blocks. They weren't very smart and mostly relied upon ECDSA signatures only. However, the PushTX technique improved the programmability of the blockchain in two main ways, amongst others. First, transaction programs were suddenly able to interoperate and combine with other transaction programs, and furthermore, they were able to enforce the next output locking conditions at runtime. The sighash preimage, or script context as it is now more widely known, contains two important hash values. So much hash you can almost smoke it. Hash prevotes and hash outputs respectively allow for a transaction, the context of itself, at runtime to enforce unlocking and locking conditions based on combinations of previous outputs and current transactions' next outputs. Hash prevotes provides logic gate-like combinatorial logic to transactions, and hash outputs provide strict enforcement of next locking conditions. The latter is introduced in the paper as a concept named Perpetually Enforced Locking Scripts, or PELS for short. It gives an example of how they work also. E.g., we will compare the previous output with the output in the current spending transaction and force them to be identical. Before explaining hash prevotes, hash outputs, and PELS, how does PushTX work? Well, first, it was called PushTX because originally the signatures were created over the transaction, e.g. the transaction TX digest algorithm, the original transaction digest algorithm. However, since naming concepts is important for intelligences to quickly comprehend them, PushTX ought to be renamed as PushCTX for context, push context, as there are different script context values for every input in a transaction. So running several different PushTX operations in a single TX doesn't make much sense. Running several PushCTX, push context operations in a TX involving multiple inputs is more illuminating. It works in a very interesting way. Using a fixed and openly known private key with its public key hard-coded into the script and creating a signature using some pre-computed ECDSA intermediary values, big number arithmetic, and validating that signature using op checksig, we can verify that a given script context data blob correctly reflects the current transaction's input runtime information. That is to say, the script being processed can read from where it and its parallel input scripts are coming from, e.g. their prevote points, and also see the new UTXO output programs the transaction is creating. Since transaction scripts can now see both backwards and forwards, they can create unlocking and locking conditions far beyond simple ECDSA signature requirements. This was a huge evolution of blockchain programmability, and thanks is due to nChain's principal researcher at the time, Wei Zhang. It's worth noting that this push context operation is absolutely going to be introduced to the opcode set for optimization purposes in the future, as it is so valuable. Now to spell things out for you. The push context technique and Bitcoin's original Layer 1 token protocol, which we'll introduce in the next video, are not possible on the useless, circumcised and lobotomized blockchain incorrectly thought of as Bitcoin, more widely known as BTC, the co-opted, useless, effectively zero throughput blockchain ruined by Jeffrey Epstein and his buddies. I will show you how we were about to introduce the new Layer 1 token protocol Bolt this year to Bitcoin. It provides a solution to the famous back to Genesis problem, which we will discuss, and long sought after Ethereum-like base layer tokens, which contain a balance to be divided and recombined and trigger additional Layer 1 events and transactions automatically, and crucially, without the Ethereum and the account-based blockchain architectural bottleneck. Coincidentally, that paedophile apologist and overall suspected closeted freak, Vitalik Buterin, announced to the world that he has solved all of his shitty high school project Ethereum blockchain's problems on January 3rd of this very year, the same day I was in Tokyo reading the Nikkei. It's almost like I'm under illegal surveillance and they're front-running things. Well, fuck you, Vitalik. We don't believe you or care about your proposed theoretically invisible upcoming 2030 fix. And much like BTC's Lightning Network, we predict it's never going to work or happen. Bitcoin, with its UTXO SPV Merkle tree architecture, never suffered from your stupid blockchain trilemma problem back in 2009 or today. As such, you are an objective retard, proven with your blockchain being choked pathetically and rendered worthless by CryptoKitties almost a decade ago. I'm Satoshi Nakamoto. Join me in the third video to continue making a mockery of the cryptocurrency and private central banking Ponzi scheme and the corrupt people behind it. Go Rakuten Eagles.